At 6:47 a.m. on July 18, 1944, Staff Sergeant Thomas Blackwell crouched in a foxhole along a sunken road near Brassos, Normandy, watching 4 crude devices he'd buried in the dirt 3 hours earlier. Each device looked absurd. A dented German Teller mine casing, roughly the size of a hatbox, copper cone visible through gaps in the metal, wires protruding at odd angles, like something cobbled together in a garage by an amateur who didn't know what he was doing. Lieutenant Anthony Morrison was 30 yards behind him in the command post. Didn't know Blackwell had planted unauthorized explosives in the road. Didn't know Blackwell had violated direct orders. Didn't know 4 improvised mines that everyone called mailboxes were the only thing standing between 127 British soldiers and a massacre. Intelligence said 12 German SdKfz 251 half-tracks were approaching through the hedgerows. Diesel engines, 20mm autocannon, MG-42 machine guns firing 1,200 rounds per minute. Last time half-tracks hit this sector, 23 British soldiers died in 4 minutes. The pattern never changed. Half-tracks appeared suddenly from behind hedgerows, machine guns raking British positions before anyone could react. By the time PIAT teams deployed, the half-tracks were gone, or the PIAT crews were dead. Blackwell knew if his mailboxes failed, Morrison would court-martial him for deploying unauthorized ordnance that endangered friendly forces. If they worked, maybe 127 men of C Company would survive until noon. The problem was nobody in the British Army believed crude improvised mines built from salvaged materials could stop armored vehicles. In the next 7 minutes, physics would prove them wrong. Or Blackwell would face charges that could end with execution. The Normandy bocage was killing British infantry at rates that made the War Office nervous. Ancient hedgerows, 8 to 12 feet high, roots deep as trenches, divided the countryside into a maze of small fields connected by narrow sunken roads. Perfect terrain for German half-track ambushes. Terrible terrain for British anti-tank weapons. Every doctrine, every manual, every training program assumed open ground. Assumed clear fields of fire. Assumed defenders could see attackers approaching from 200 yards or more. The bocage gave you 8 to 10 yards of visibility before a half-track appeared around a hedgerow corner with its machine guns already firing. British anti-tank weapons were failing catastrophically in this terrain. The Boy's anti-tank rifle, designed in 1937, couldn't penetrate SdKfz 251 armor at combat ranges. The rifle needed 75 yards minimum to achieve penetration velocity. Hedgerow ambush distances gave you 8 to 10 yards. The math didn't work. The PIAT Projector infantry anti-tank had different problems. The weapon used a powerful spring mechanism to launch a 3-pound shaped charge projectile. The spring required 15 yards of clear space to arm properly. Safety mechanism prevented premature detonation. But hedgerow ambushes happened at 8 to 10 yards. The PIAT wouldn't arm. You'd pull the trigger, the projectile would hit the target, bounce off, fail to detonate. Perfectly functional weapon rendered useless by terrain and safety engineering. Between July 10th and July 17th, 8 days, the 159th Infantry Brigade lost 89 men to German half-track attacks in hedgerow ambushes. 11 separate engagements, 11 British defeats. The half-tracks would appear from behind hedgerows, fire their MG-42s and 20mm autocannon, kill everyone in the immediate area, then disappear back into the bocage before British forces could coordinate effective response. The pattern was mechanical, predictable, unstoppable. British infantry were terrified of hedgerow fighting, terrified of narrow roads, terrified of the diesel engine sound that meant death was coming, and you had no weapon that could stop it. Private James Whitmore died on July 12, 1944. Age 19, from Sheffield, been in France 9 days. Assigned as PIAT gunner, positioned in a hedgerow corner with good fields of fire across a road junction. Whitmore was careful, thorough, followed procedures exactly. When the half-track appeared 10 yards away, Whitmore tried to cock the PIAT spring mechanism, pulled the cocking lever back. The spring wouldn't engage. Safety mechanism detected insufficient arming distance. Whitmore needed 15 yards. He had 10. The PIAT wouldn't arm. Whitmore tried to manually override the safety, fumbled with the release catch. The half-track's MG-42 opened fire, 1,200 rounds per minute. Tracers walked up Whitmore's position. 14 hits in 3 seconds. Whitmore died trying to make his weapon work. His PIAT lay beside him afterward, perfectly functional, just needed 5 more yards of space that the hedgerows didn't provide. His body was recovered that evening. The PIAT was reassigned to another soldier who would face the same impossible geometry. Sergeant David Morrison died on July 15th, aged 27, veteran of North Africa, brother of Lieutenant Anthony Morrison. David led a boys' anti-tank rifle team, experienced, professional, knew the weapon's limitations. On July 15th, his team engaged a half-track at 40 yards through a gap in the hedgerows. Good position, clear shot. David fired. The boy's rifle, .55 caliber, designed to penetrate early war tank armor, hit the SdKfz 251 frontal plate. The round penetrated the outer armor layer, didn't penetrate the inner-spaced armor. The half-track's 20mm autocannon returned fire. David Morrison was killed instantly. Lieutenant Morrison found his brother's body 2 hours later. The boy's rifle lay beside David, barrel still warm, 3 spent casings on the ground. The weapon had functioned perfectly. The ammunition had performed as designed. The armor was just too thick for a rifle designed in 1937 to fight tanks built in 1943. Lieutenant Morrison requested immediate transfer for his entire company. Request denied. Someone had to hold the hedgerow sectors. Lieutenant Morrison stayed, watched more men die, waited for his turn. On July 17th, an entire PIAT section died in 8 seconds. 6 men positioned in a sunken road, perfect ambush position. The half-track approached slowly, cautiously. Corporal Peters, section leader, had the PIAT ready, cocked, aimed, waiting for optimal range. The half-track came around the corner, 11 yards away. Peters fired immediately. The PIAT projectile, 2.5 pounds, shaped charge warhead designed to penetrate armor, hit the half-track's frontal plate and bounced off. Didn't detonate. Minimum arming distance was 15 yards. Peters had 11. The safety mechanism did exactly what it was designed to do. Prevented premature detonation. The half-track's MG-42 returned fire. All 6 men killed in the next 8 seconds. When recovery teams found the bodies, the PIAT was still there. Undamaged, functional, just 4 yards short of the distance it needed to arm. By July 17th, the numbers were undeniable. 89 British soldiers killed in 8 days. Every death followed the same pattern. Weapons that worked perfectly in open terrain failed catastrophically in hedgerows. PIATs couldn't arm at hedgerow distances. Boys' rifles couldn't penetrate at close range. British infantry had no answer for German half-tracks in the bocage. German commanders knew it. They used half-tracks aggressively. New British anti-tank weapons were useless in confined terrain. The psychological effect was devastating. British soldiers heard diesel engines and knew they were about to die. Officers issued orders to hold positions knowing those positions were death traps. Morale was collapsing. Men were requesting transfers, faking injuries, anything to avoid hedgerow sectors. Thomas Blackwell was born in 1913 in Easington Colliery, County Durham. Coal mining town. His father worked underground 41 years. Tommy started pit work at age 14 in 1927. By 1939, he was a demolition specialist. Precision blasting. Shaped charges to break coal seams without collapsing tunnels. Blackwell understood explosive physics from mining. Understood you don't need more explosive. You need the right shape in the right place. He used copper cones to direct blast force into specific rock types. Could calculate exact explosive needed for any material. His supervisors called him careful, methodical, never wasted materials, never caused accidental collapses. When war started in September 1939, Blackwell enlisted in the Royal Engineers. Army needed men who understood explosives. Blackwell spent 1940 through 1943 as demolitions instructor. Taught bridge demolition, obstacle clearing, mine warfare. His evaluation reports noted he possessed exceptional understanding of explosive physics. Also noted, he didn't always follow doctrine when field conditions dictated alternative approaches. Translation: Blackwell improvised when regulations were stupid. He didn't argue with officers, didn't challenge doctrine openly, just did what worked and apologized later if necessary. Other engineers called him the professor, not affectionate. He made them look bad by solving problems they couldn't solve. Officers didn't trust him. Too independent. Enlisted men trusted him completely. He kept them alive. Blackwell was attached to the 159th Infantry Brigade in July 1944. Role: combat engineer, explosive ordnance, field fortifications. He watched the hedgerow killings happen. Watched Whitmore die with a pit that wouldn't arm. Watched David Morrison die with a rifle that couldn't penetrate. Watched Corporal Peters and 5 men die because safety mechanisms worked exactly as designed. The engineering officer said the problem was terrain. Nothing could be done. British weapons weren't designed for hedgerow fighting. Wait for better equipment, wait for tanks, wait for the bocage campaign to end. Blackwell disagreed but said nothing. On July 16th, he started collecting materials. German Teller mine casings from destroyed vehicles. British 808 plastic explosive from engineering depot. Copper cones cut from wrecked half-track exhaust manifolds. Pressure detonators salvaged from damaged PIAT rounds. He worked alone. Didn't tell anyone what he was building. Didn't ask permission. On the evening of July 17th, he showed Lieutenant Morrison a crude device that looked like a dented mailbox with wires sticking out. Morrison laughed, called it Blackwell's mailbox bomb, refused to authorize deployment, unauthorized ordnance, untested, dangerous. Blackwell saluted, said yes, sir, took the 4 mailboxes back to the engineering depot. That night, while Morrison slept, Blackwell buried all 4 devices in the sunken road where C Company was dug in. Buried them at 80, 120, 180, and 240 yards from British forward positions. Covered them with thin layers of dirt, armed the pressure detonators, went back to his foxhole, waited for morning, waited for German half-tracks, waited to learn if physics worked the way Durham coal miners knew it worked. July 16th, 1944, 2,200 hours. Blackwell worked alone in the engineering depot maintenance tent behind British lines. Canvas walls, single kerosene lantern. Most of the engineering section had gone to sleep. The tent smelled like oil and metal and damp canvas. Blackwell laid out materials on a wooden workbench scarred from 2 years of field use. 1 German Teller mine casing, captured 3 days earlier from a destroyed German position. Already diffused, empty, hollow cylinder 12 inches diameter, 4 inches deep. Scratched, dented, but structurally sound. 3 pounds of British 8008 plastic explosive. Olive drab color. Consistency of modeling clay. Stable. Wouldn't detonate from impact or rough handling. Required detonator to initiate. One copper cone cut from a destroyed German half-track's exhaust manifold. Blackwell had found the wrecked vehicle 2 days earlier, cut the manifold free with a hacksaw, spent an hour shaping the copper into a cone, 4 inches diameter at the base, tapering to a point. Angle, 42 degrees. He'd measured it 3 times. One pressure detonator salvaged from a damaged PIAT round. The PIAT projectile from Corporal Peters' section. The one that hit the half-track and didn't detonate. Blackwell had recovered it from the wreckage. The shaped charge warhead was ruined, but the detonator was intact. He'd carefully extracted it, tested the pressure mechanism. 40 pounds of pressure required to trigger. Perfect. His tools: wire cutters, pliers, measuring tape, utility knife, electrical tape. Blackwell understood the physics from mining. Shaped charges worked through focused energy, not brute force. When the explosive detonated, the blast wave collapsed the copper cone inward. The cone material compressed, accelerated, formed a superheated jet of molten copper traveling at 25,000 feet per second. The jet didn't push through armor. It burned through. Kinetic energy and heat combined. The formula was simple. Penetration depth equals 6 to 8 times the cone diameter. Blackwell's cone was 4 inches diameter. That meant potential penetration of 24 to 32 inches. The SdKfz 251 half-track had maximum armor thickness of 14.5 millimeters, roughly 0.57 inches. The shaped charge would punch through like a nail through cardboard. The physics was certain. The question was whether Blackwell could build a device crude enough to construct in a field depot, but precise enough to focus the blast correctly. He started with the 808 explosive. Pulled off a chunk, kneaded it like dough. The explosive was malleable, easy to shape. He pressed it into the teller mine casing, building up layers, filling the cylinder. When he had roughly 2 pounds packed inside, he used the knife to carve a hollow depression in the center. Cone-shaped cavity, 4 inches deep. The cavity had to match the copper cone's dimensions exactly. Too loose, and the cone wouldn't collapse properly. Too tight, and the explosive wouldn't detonate evenly. He worked slowly, checking measurements, carving carefully. His hands were steady despite working by lantern light. 20 minutes to get the cavity right. He inserted the copper cone point down into the cavity. The fit was tight. He pressed it firmly into the explosive. The cone's base sat flush with the top of the explosive mass. Perfect alignment. The cone angle was 42 degrees. He'd learned that angle in the coal fields. Optimal for maximum penetration. Steeper angles gave more penetration, but less reliability. Shallower angles gave wider dispersion, but less focused energy. 42 degrees was the sweet spot. Blackwell attached the PIAT detonator to the top of the explosive. Used electrical tape to secure it. The detonator had 2 wires. He connected them to a pressure plate. The pressure plate was a circular piece of metal 8 inches diameter. He'd cut it from a destroyed ammunition crate lid, thin enough to flex under weight but strong enough to maintain shape. He attached the plate to the top of the teller mine casing using wire loops. When weight pressed down on the plate, it would close an electrical circuit, trigger the detonator, initiate the explosive. The physics said 40 pounds of pressure would trigger the mechanism. A half-track weighed 8,000 pounds minimum. The math wasn't even close. The device would definitely trigger. Blackwell examined the finished product. It looked ridiculous. The teller mine casing was dented and scratched. The copper cone was visible through gaps where the casing didn't quite fit together. The wires poked out at odd angles because he'd run out of electrical tape. The pressure plate sat crooked, because the wire loops weren't perfectly even. The whole thing looked like something assembled in a barn by someone who didn't know what they were doing. Blackwell knew it would work. Knew the physics. Knew the copper cone would collapse correctly. Knew the jet would penetrate. But looking at the device, he understood why nobody would believe him. It looked amateur, crude, dangerous. He weighed it in his hands, 4.5 pounds, light enough to carry, heavy enough to stay in place once buried. He set it aside, started building the second one. Same process, same materials, slightly different because he was using salvaged components. The second teller mine casing had a larger dent. The second copper cone was 3.8 inches diameter instead of 4. He adjusted the explosive cavity accordingly. The second device took 18 minutes to build, faster now that he knew the process. The third device used a copper cone cut from a different vehicle, slightly different metal composition. Blackwell wasn't sure if that mattered. The physics said it shouldn't. Molten copper was molten copper. The fourth device was the crudest. He was running low on materials. The teller mine casing had a crack along one side. He sealed it with tar from a damaged tire. The copper cone was poorly shaped. He'd rushed the cutting. The detonator wiring was sloppy. But it would work. The physics didn't care about appearance. By 0300 hours, he had 4 mailboxes. That's what Morrison had called them. Blackwell's mailbox bombs. The name fit. They looked like dented mailboxes with wires attached. He packed them in wooden crates marked engineering supplies, hid them under tarps, went to his bunk, didn't sleep, lay on the canvas cot watching the tent ceiling, thinking about copper cones and explosive physics and 89 dead British soldiers who'd had no weapon that worked in hedgerows. July 17th, 0800 hours. Blackwell requested a meeting with Lieutenant Anthony Morrison. Morrison was in the company headquarters, a commandeered farmhouse with walls pocked by shrapnel. Morrison sat behind a wooden table covered in maps and radio equipment. Age 26. Sandhurst graduate. By-the-book officer who believed regulations existed for good reasons. His brother David had died 2 days earlier. The grief made Morrison rigid, desperate for control, desperate for something that made sense in a war that made no sense. Blackwell entered, saluted. Morrison returned the salute, gestured to a chair. Blackwell remained standing. "Sir, I've developed a mine that can stop half-tracks in hedgerow terrain." Morrison looked up from the maps. "We have mines, Sergeant. Teller mines, S-mines. They don't work in bocage. This is different, sir. Shaped charge. Focuses the blast through armor instead of outward." Morrison's expression shifted. Interested, but skeptical. "Show me." Blackwell retrieved one of the mailboxes from outside, carried it into the headquarters, set it on the table. Morrison stared at it for 5 seconds. Then he laughed, actually laughed. "That's your secret weapon?" Morrison picked up the device, turned it over, examined the crude construction. "Looks like something the Home Guard would cobble together in a barn." 2 other officers were present. Captain Richards from battalion staff. Lieutenant Pembroke from 2nd Platoon. Both looked at the device. Richards smiled. Pembroke tried not to laugh. Morrison set the mailbox down. "This is your solution to half-tracks?" "This?" "Yes, sir. The copper cone focuses." "I can see the copper cone, Sergeant. I can see everything. The dents, the wires sticking out, the cracks sealed with tar." Morrison's voice was controlled but cold. "This is unauthorized ordnance. Not British Army standard issue. No testing, no documentation, no approval from Ordnance Command." "Sir, the physics—" "I don't care about physics. I care about regulations." Morrison stood, walked around the table. What if it detonates prematurely? Kills our own men? What if it fails? Half-track rolls over it, nothing happens. Then we're dead anyway, and I've violated doctrine by deploying unauthorized explosives. Blackwell said nothing. Morrison continued. I won't risk my company on improvised devices built by one sergeant who thinks he's smarter than Army engineers. My brother died because our weapons don't work in this terrain. I'm not going to get more men killed by using weapons that definitely don't work because they were built in a maintenance tent with salvaged materials. Richard spoke up. Sir, maybe we could test. No. Morrison's voice was flat, final. No testing, no deployment, no exceptions. He looked at Blackwell. Sergeant, I appreciate initiative. I respect your experience. But this, he gestured at the mailbox, this is not a weapon. This is desperation shaped like a mine. We'll wait for proper equipment. We'll follow doctrine. We'll survive with the weapons we have until better weapons arrive. Blackwell picked up the mailbox. Yes, sir. Understood, sir. Do you understand, Sergeant? No unauthorized explosives deployed without my direct approval. That's an order. Yes, sir. Blackwell saluted, left the headquarters, carried the mailbox back to the engineering depot. The other officers started calling it Blackwell's mailbox bomb within the hour. The name spread through C Company by noon. Everyone thought it was funny. The engineer who built crude devices that looked like dented mailboxes. The name shortened to the mailbox. Blackwell heard soldiers joking about it, heard them laughing. He said nothing. Went back to the depot. The 4 mailboxes were still in their crates, still hidden under tarps. Morrison had given a direct order. No unauthorized explosives. Blackwell understood orders, understood consequences of disobeying orders. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, possibly prison. But he also understood physics, understood that Morrison's orders wouldn't stop German half-tracks, understood that good men would die tomorrow following doctrine that didn't work. That evening, 1900 hours, intelligence briefing in the company headquarters, all platoon commanders present. Blackwell attended as engineering section representative. The intelligence officer, Lieutenant Crane, stood beside a map of the local area. German counterattack developing. Luftwaffe reconnaissance spotted 12 SdKfz 251 half-tracks, 4 kilometers northwest, moving toward Brass. Expected contact tomorrow morning, 0700 to 0800 hours. Crane pointed to the map. C Company assigned to hold this position. Sunken road, 300 meters long, hedgerows on both sides. Morrison studied the map. Engagement distances? 8 to 12 yards maximum. Hedgerows restrict visibility. PIAT effectiveness? Crane hesitated. PIATs require 15 yards minimum arming distance. So PIATs are useless. Yes, sir. Boys' rifles? Insufficient penetration at close range. So we have no effective anti-tank weapons for this position. Crane said nothing. The answer was obvious. Morrison looked at his platoon commanders. Defensive plan. Position PIAT teams at road bends where we might get 15-yard engagement distances. Boys' rifle teams in the hedgerows for suppressive fire. Bren guns for anti-personnel. We hold as long as possible. Reinforcements should arrive within 2 hours of first contact. Everyone in the room understood what that meant. Hold as long as possible meant die slowly. Reinforcements in 2 hours meant most of C Company would be dead before help arrived. The briefing ended. Officers filed out. Blackwell remained, studying the map. The sunken road. Perfect kill zone for half-tracks. Perfect death trap for British infantry. C Company moved to positions at 2100 hours. 127 men dug foxholes along 400 yards of sunken road. Morrison established his command post in an abandoned farmhouse 80 yards behind the forward line. Blackwell was assigned to engineering section. Maintain equipment, clear obstacles, standard duties. He worked until 2300 hours, then waited. Morrison went to sleep at 23:30 hours. Blackwell could see the farmhouse from his position, saw the lights go out, saw Morrison's Batman leave. The command post was quiet. Blackwell retrieved the 4 crates from the engineering depot, carried them one at a time to the sunken road. Each crate weighed 30 pounds. Awkward, but manageable. The moon provided enough light to work. He moved quietly. German patrols were active. Any noise could draw fire. He identified 4 choke points along the road, places where half-tracks would have to pass. Road bends, narrow sections. He buried the first mailbox 80 yards from British forward positions. Used an entrenching tool to dig. The ground was hard-packed dirt and gravel. Resisted the shovel. Each hole took 20 minutes to dig. 12 inches deep, 14 inches diameter. Blackwell's hands cramped. Fingers went numb. He kept digging. Placed the first mailbox in the hole. Positioned it carefully. Pressure plate level with the road surface. Covered it with a thin layer of dirt. Just enough to camouflage it. Not enough to prevent triggering. The dirt layer was maybe 1 inch thick. A half-track's weight would compress it instantly, trigger the pressure plate. He marked the location in his mind. 80 yards from the forward foxholes. Second mailbox at 120 yards. Same process. Dig, place, cover. His hands were bleeding now, blisters torn open. The entrenching tool handle was slippery with blood and sweat. He wiped his hands on his trousers, kept working. Third mailbox at 180 yards. The hole was harder to dig here. Roots from the hedgerow crossed the road underground. He had to cut through them with the entrenching tool blade. Took 30 minutes. His shoulders ached. Shirt soaked with sweat despite the cool night air. Fourth mailbox at 240 yards, furthest from British positions. This was the one that would hit first if half-tracks came from the northwest. Blackwell placed it carefully, checked the pressure plate alignment, covered it, smoothed the dirt to match the surrounding road surface. Finished at 02:30 hours. 4 mailboxes buried. 4 devices that nobody authorized. 4 crude improvised mines that violated every regulation Morrison had cited. Blackwell knew the consequences. Knew if they failed, he'd face court-martial. Knew if they detonated prematurely and killed British soldiers, he'd face murder charges. Knew if Morrison discovered them before the Germans arrived, he'd be arrested immediately. But he also knew the physics. Knew the copper cones would collapse under explosive force. Knew the jets would penetrate half-track armor. Knew 127 men would die tomorrow if nothing changed. He cleaned the entrenching tool, returned it to the equipment cache, went back to his foxhole, sat in the dark, hands throbbing, shoulders burning. 4 hours until dawn. 4 hours until German half-tracks arrived. 4 hours to wait and see if physics worked the way Durham miners knew it worked. July 18th, 1944. 06:47 hours. Blackwell crouched in his foxhole, watching the road. Fog hung low in the hedgerows. Typical Normandy morning, visibility 60 to 80 yards maximum. Sound carried clearly in the stillness. No wind, no birds, just the distant rumble of artillery from sectors to the east. Blackwell heard them before he saw them. Diesel engines, distinctive German sound, different pitch than British or American engines. The sound came from the northwest, multiple vehicles, moving slowly through the hedgerows. Blackwell checked his watch. 06:51. He looked at Morrison's command post. No activity. Morrison was probably reviewing defensive positions, coordinating with platoon leaders. Had no idea 4 unauthorized mines were buried in the road his company was defending. 0653 hours. The first half-track appeared through the fog. 300 yards out. SdKfz 251. Angular silhouette. Brutal efficiency in the design. Open-topped troop compartment. MG-42 mounted forward. 20mm autocannon at the rear. Blackwell counted. 2 more half-tracks behind the first. 40-yard spacing between vehicles. Standard German tactical formation. Each half-track carried 12 infantry plus crew. 3 vehicles meant 48 German soldiers plus 9 crew members. 57 enemy troops approaching 127 British defenders who had no weapons that worked at hedgerow distances. Along the British line, soldiers tensed. PIAT teams checked their weapons. Knowing the PIATs wouldn't arm. Boys' rifle teams sighted through the fog. Knowing their rounds wouldn't penetrate. Bren gunners prepared to fire. Knowing machine guns were useless against armor. Everyone waiting to die. Morrison's voice came over the radio net. Hold fire until my command. All positions hold fire. The half-tracks advanced. Led vehicle at 250 yards, 200 yards, 180 yards, rolling directly toward Blackwell's device number 4. The device buried at 240 yards from British forward positions. Blackwell watched the road surface. The thin layer of dirt covering the pressure plate. 40 pounds required to trigger. The half-track weighed 8,000 pounds minimum. Simple physics. But Blackwell's hands were shaking anyway. 160 yards. The lead half-track's right track aligned with device number 4's position. Blackwell held his breath. The track rolled forward, contacted the pressure plate. 8,000 pounds of pressure. The detonator triggered. The explosion was sharp. A crack, not the deep boom of standard mines. Different sound, focused, directional. Inside the Teller mine casing, 3 pounds of 808 explosive detonated. The blast wave traveled outward in all directions, but most of the energy went downward and forward. Hit the copper cone. The cone collapsed inward in microseconds. Copper compressed, accelerated, formed a superheated jet of molten copper traveling at 25,000 feet per second. The jet punched through the road surface, punched through the half-track's belly armor. 14.5 millimeters of steel. The jet went through like the armor wasn't there, penetrated the floor, continued through the engine compartment, punctured the fuel tank. Time from detonation to fuel tank penetration, 0.003 seconds. The visible effect was immediate. The half-track lifted 6 inches off the ground. Front end rose, back end stayed down. Orange flame erupted from the engine grill. Black smoke poured from the crew compartment. The vehicle rolled forward 8 feet on momentum. Stopped. Secondary explosion. The fuel tank ignited. 60 gallons of diesel fuel. The entire vehicle engulfed in flames within 2 seconds. The crew tried to bail out. Driver's hatch opened. Flames came through. Driver fell out, uniform burning. Gunner followed. Also burning. The 12 infantry in the passenger compartment. 9 killed instantly. The shaped charged jet had passed through the passenger area. 3 survivors staggered out, severely burned, screaming. Collapsed in the road. British positions, stunned silence. 3 seconds of nothing, then cheering from the foxholes. Soldiers who'd been preparing to die suddenly watching a half-track burn. Morrison's voice on the radio, confused, urgent. What the hell was that? Report, what just happened? Nobody answered. Nobody knew except Blackwell. The second half-track in the column. Driver saw the lead vehicle burning, saw flames, saw survivors burning in the road, hit the brakes, tried to reverse. Too slow. Already committed to the narrow road section. Couldn't turn around. Hedgerows on both sides. Only option was reverse or continue forward. Driver chose forward, accelerated, tried to get past the burning wreckage quickly, rolled directly onto device number 3. 180 yards from British positions, device number 3 detonated. Same sharp crack, same copper jet, 25,000 feet per second. This time the jet punched through the driver's compartment, entered through the floor, exited through the roof. Driver killed instantly. Half-track veered left. No control. Crashed into the hedgerow at 15 miles per hour. Didn't burn. The jet missed the fuel tank, but the vehicle was completely disabled. Engine destroyed. Steering gone. The crew bailed out immediately. Ran back toward German lines, the 12 infantry and back evacuated. Abandoned the vehicle. Disappeared into the hedgerows. 2 half-tracks stopped. 2 German crews dead or fleeing. 0 British casualties. Engagement time so far, 18 seconds. The 3rd half-track. Commander stood in the cupola, saw 2 vehicles destroyed in front of him, saw flames, saw wreckage blocking the road, made a decision, ordered reverse. The driver threw the transmission into reverse gear. The half-track backed up 20 yards, stopped. 4th half-track in the column blocked the road behind. Trapped. Commander's options: advance through the minefield or dismount and fight on foot. He chose advancement. Didn't know how many mines. Might get lucky. Ordered the driver forward. Slow speed, 5 miles per hour, watching the road surface, looking for disturbed earth. The half-track rolled forward. Passed device number 2, missed it by 3 feet. Pure luck. The device was buried slightly off-center. The half-track's tracks passed on either side. Blackwell watched. Saw the half-track survive. Felt his stomach clench. 1 mine left. Device number 1, 80 yards from British forward positions. The half-track continued. Cautious. Slow. Commander scanning the road, looking for mines. Didn't see device number 1. The dirt camouflage was perfect. The half-track rolled forward. Right track contacted the pressure plate. Device number 1 detonated. Copper jet penetrated the rear section. Passenger compartment. 6 German infantry killed instantly. The jet passed through their position. Devastating. But the jet missed the engine, missed the fuel tank. The half-track was damaged but mobile. The commander panicked. Saw 6 of his men dead. Saw blood. Saw the vehicle was still running. Ordered full reverse. The driver complied. Backed away at maximum speed. 15 miles per hour in reverse. Backing toward German lines. The crew abandoned the vehicle 200 yards out. Left it sitting in the middle of the road, engine running, nobody aboard. The 4th half-track never entered the kill zone. Blocked by wreckage. Blocked by the retreating 3rd half-track. Commander assessed the situation. 3 vehicles in front of him. 1 burning, 1 crashed, 1 abandoned. Obvious minefield. Unknown number of mines. Not worth the risk. Ordered withdrawal. The 4th half-track reversed. Backed away. Disappeared into the fog. The remaining 8 half-tracks in the German column. Never came forward. Radio communication between German vehicles. Warnings about British mines. New type. Extremely effective. Entire German attack aborted. 3 half-tracks stopped. Device number 4. Destroy. Half-track. Crew dead. Vehicle burning. Device number 3. Disabled half-track. Crew escaped. Vehicle abandoned. Device number 1. Damaged half-track. 6 infantry dead. Vehicle abandoned. Device number 2. Never triggered. Still buried in the road. Total engagement time, 7 minutes. British casualties, 0. German casualties, 11 killed, 16 wounded, 3 vehicles destroyed or disabled. The mathematics was impossible. 4 crude devices that looked like mailboxes. built in a maintenance tent, assembled from salvaged materials. Just stopped a German armored attack that should have killed dozens of British soldiers. Blackwell sat in his foxhole, hands still shaking, not from fear. From the realization that physics worked exactly the way he knew it would work. Morrison came forward from the command post, walked along the British line, examined the burning half-track, examined the blast pattern in the road. Narrow penetration hole, focused damage, not the wide crater of a standard mine. Morrison knew that signature. His brother David had told him about shaped charges. Theoretical discussions. North Africa, 1943. Morrison looked at the device crater, looked at Blackwell's foxhole, walked directly to Blackwell's position, stood above the foxhole. His face was unreadable. "You planted them anyway." Blackwell stood. "Yes, sir." "Against my direct order." "Yes, sir." Morrison said nothing for 10 seconds, looked at the burning half-track, looked at his 127 men, all alive, all watching. Morrison's voice was quiet, controlled. "How many mailboxes do you have left?" "None, sir. Used all 4. "Can you make more?" "Yes, sir, if I have materials." Morrison nodded once. "Make 20. That's an order." By 0800 hours, July 18th, every soldier in C Company knew about the mailboxes. By 1000 hours, battalion headquarters heard. By 1200 hours, brigade engineering officer requested demonstration. By 1500 hours, Blackwell was briefing divisional staff on shaped charge principles. The spread was organic, soldier to soldier, officer to officer. Nobody needed to be convinced. The burning half-track was proof. 3 destroyed German vehicles, 0 British casualties. The mathematics spoke for itself. Brigadier Thompson, commanding 159th Infantry Brigade, requested 50 mailboxes immediately. Engineering depots couldn't provide materials that fast. Not enough salvaged Teller mine casings, not enough copper. Blackwell's solution was simple. Train more engineers to build them. Each engineer trains 4 more. Production scales exponentially. He selected 12 engineers from brigade. Spent July 19th teaching them how to shape the 808 explosive, how to carve the cone cavity, how to cut copper from salvaged vehicles, how to wire the pressure detonators. The engineers were skeptical at first. The devices looked crude, but Blackwell showed them the physics, showed them the penetration calculations, showed them the burning half-track wreckage. By evening, all 12 could build functional mailboxes. Each took their knowledge back to their units, taught 4 more engineers. By July 21st, 48 engineers across 159th Brigade could build shaped charge mines from salvaged materials. Brigade-level production started July 20th. Engineers scavenged German minefields for Teller mine casings, cut copper from destroyed vehicles, salvaged detonators from damaged British ordnance, built mailboxes in maintenance tents, field workshops, anywhere with a workbench and basic tools. Production numbers, July 20th through 31st, 187 mailboxes built. 11th Armoured Division headquarters wanted them for the entire division. Problem: no official designation, no documentation, no approval from Ordnance Command. Solution: bureaucratic creativity. Call them Field Expedient Anti-Tank Devices, Type B. Sounds official. Bypasses the approval process. Works because nobody at headquarters wants to be responsible for stopping a weapon that's actually killing German armor. Division-wide adoption, July 23rd. Engineering manual distributed. Blackwell's 12-page document. Materials list. Construction procedures. Deployment guidelines. Safety protocols. Every combat engineer company received copies. Production standardized. Specific measurements. specific materials, no more improvisation. By August 1st, the mailbox wasn't improvised anymore. It was doctrine. 2nd British Army Headquarters requested technical specifications August 2nd. Blackwell wrote a formal report, explained shape-charge physics, provided penetration calculations, included combat results. The report sat on desks for 1 week while fellow officers debated. The weapon worked but violated regulations, used unauthorized materials, had no safety testing, no quality control. But 2nd Army was losing soldiers to German armor in hedgerow terrain. PIAT still didn't work. Boys' rifles still couldn't penetrate. The mailboxes did work. Statistics proved it. August 9th, 2nd Army authorized production across all combat engineer units in Normandy. Official designation: Number 73 Grenade, Anti-Tank. Bureaucratic retrofit to make unauthorized ordnance legal. Soldiers still called them mailboxes. Engineers called them Blackwell charges. Official paperwork called them Number 73 Grenades. 3 names for the same device. Production accelerated. August 1st through 15th, 940 mailboxes built. August 16th through 31st, 2,100. By September, every British combat engineer company in Northwest Europe had materials and training to build shaped charge mines. Total production, August through September: 6,200 devices. The casualty statistics told the story. June 6th through July 17th, D-Day, through pre-mailbox period. British infantry casualties from German half-track attacks in bocage terrain: 340 killed, 890 wounded, 43 days of combat. Average, 7.9 killed per day. July 18th through August 31st, post-mailbox deployment. British infantry casualties from half-track attacks: 52 killed, 180 wounded, 45 days. Average, 1.2 killed per day. Reduction, 85% fewer deaths, 80% fewer wounded. Same terrain, same enemy, different weapon. Vehicle kill ratios proved effectiveness. June through July 17th, British infantry destroyed 23 German half-tracks using PIATs, boys' rifles, conventional weapons. 43 days. Average, 0.5 vehicles destroyed per day. July 18th through August 31st, British infantry destroyed 187 German half-tracks, primarily using mailboxes. 45 days. Average, 4.2 vehicles destroyed per day. 8-to-1 increase in kill effectiveness. German 7th Army intelligence reports, August 19th. Critical shortage of armored personnel carriers due to increased British mine effectiveness in hedgerow terrain. Panzer Lehr Division report, August 18th. British have deployed new anti-tank mine. Extremely effective against SdKfz 251. Recommend avoiding narrow roads. 2nd SS Panzer Division report, August 24th. Half-track losses unsustainable. Request tank support for all hedgerow operations. Germans captured their first mailbox, July 25th. Recovered device number 3, the unexploded mine from Blackwell's initial engagement. Sent it to Wehrmacht testing facility at Kummersdorf. Analysis report dated July the 29th. British improvised shaped charge mine. Crude construction, effective design. Copper cone focuses explosive energy. Penetration capability, 200 to 250 millimeters armor equivalent. Recommendation: develop countermeasures immediately. German countermeasures failed. Added sandbags to half-track floors. Didn't work. Shaped charge penetrated sandbags in armor. Tried installing spaced armor on belly plates. Too heavy. Reduced mobility. Made vehicles slower targets. Trained drivers to spot disturbed earth. British engineers improved camouflage techniques. Eventually, Germans just avoided hedgerow roads entirely. Required tank escorts for half-track movements. Slowed tactical mobility. changed operational doctrine. Captured German documents, September 1944. Letter from General Oberst Paul Hauser, 7th Army Commander, to Oberkommando der Wehrmacht. British mine technology has evolved significantly. Our half-track force reduced by 40% due to new mine types. Request immediate development of comparable German-shaped charge mines. German response: too late. Production priorities elsewhere. War economy collapsing. No resources for new mine development. Blackwell received the Military Medal July 24th. Morrison recommended him. Award approved August 5th. Citation read: for exceptional initiative and technical skill in developing field-expedient anti-tank weapons that saved numerous British lives. Ceremony was brief. Brigade commander pinned the medal. Blackwell saluted. Returned to duty same day. Refused interviews from Army newspapers. Didn't write about the mailboxes, just trained engineers. Built more devices, did his job. Post-war, demobilized September 1945. Returned to Durham coalfields. Worked as blasting supervisor, Easington Colliery. Never mentioned the mailboxes. When asked about war service, engineering, explosives, that's all. Morrison survived. Became career officer. Retired as colonel, 1967. Wrote memoir. Published 1972. One chapter dedicated to Blackwell. The man who saved C Company with physics and copper. Morrison tracked Blackwell down. 1973. Found him still working at Easington, age 60. Blackwell's response to Morrison's praise: just did what needed doing. Math doesn't lie. Blackwell died 1989, age 76. Heart attack underground. Still working. Buried Easington Cemetery. Headstone read: Thomas Blackwell, 1913 to 1989, miner and soldier. No mention of mailboxes, no mention of shaped charges, no mention of 127 lives saved on July 18, 1944. The shaped charge principle became foundation of modern anti-tank warfare. Post-1944, British Army officially adopted shaped charge technology. 1945. Number 68 grenade, rifle-launched shaped charge. 1950s. Heat rounds, high-explosive anti-tank for tank guns. 1960s. Wire-guided anti-tank missiles with shaped charge warheads. 1970s through present. Every modern anti-tank weapon uses shaped charge principle Blackwell proved in Normandy hedgerows. Technical specifications of number 73, grenade, copper cone angle 42 degrees. Exactly what Blackwell calculated. Penetration depth formula, 6 to 8 times cone diameter. Exactly what Durham miners knew. Official British Ordnance history credits multiple contributors for shaped charge mine development. Doesn't mention Blackwell by name. Modern soldiers fire shaped charge weapons without knowing. Every heat round, every anti-tank missile, every shaped charge mine. All descended from physics one coal miner understood in 1944. All proven effective by 4 crude devices that officers called mailboxes. Thomas Blackwell changed anti-tank warfare with salvaged copper and mathematics. Nobody remembers his name. The weapons remember the principle. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories every single week. Real people who changed warfare without recognition, who saved lives without medals, who proved innovation comes from sergeants with physics knowledge, not just generals with doctrine. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. Texas, London, Durham? Our community spans the globe. You're not just watching, you're keeping Thomas Blackwell's story alive. Thank you for remembering the men who made history with copper and mathematics.